Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Vibes. I'd love to welcome here Autumn Karen, who is a ghostwriter, a filmmaker, and a college professor. Did I get that right?
You do, and those are all full-time jobs. So, I can
Well,
get a lot done.
we're going to talk about your writing, I suppose, today. Before we get into that, tell us a little bit more about you.
So I am a mom of three boys, and I live in North Carolina. I've been a professional ghostwriter for like 12 years, 15 years. I don't know. I kind of lose track after a while, Kyle. And and so I wrote books for a long time. I'm on book number 28 as far as like writing books for clients in the last 12 or 15 years. And then I got offered a job as a full-time writing professor at High Point University about 3.5 years ago. And I really enjoyed doing that because, freelancing is not for the weak. It's not for the faint of heart. And so I do that as well. And then a couple years ago, I decided I wanted to go into movies. So I went back at the age of 40 and started my MFA in screenwriting because I had, up until that point, had never taken a writing class except for my freshman writing class. So I'd been a professional writer all those years, really wanted mentorship and also wanted to make movies, which is hard from North Carolina unless you like have some in. So I was admitted to University of North Carolina School of the Arts. And they're a top 10 film school. They're phenomenal right here near where I live. And now I have a development and distribution company and making movies, in addition to still writing and teaching and momming.
Well, I did want to talk about your writing today. When you're writing for someone else, don't you have to get to know who they are and what they're thinking in order to write for them? Or what's your process?
So that's a great question. And my process is to listen first. And that's really what it's about. So you cannot become the voice of someone else unless you really are open to the vibes, right? We're here on the Vibes podcast. Unless you're open to that. So I always start with listening, and there's months and months of like listening and just kind of taking it in and making notes and making sense of who they are and what they want before a word is really written. So that's kind of my take on it. I'm actually working on a book on ghostwriting for Kindle Hunt, so for Innovative Ink, which is an imprint of Kindle Hunt. And that'll be out next spring. And that's reflective of the ghostwriting that I teach. So I have a master's in education. I taught public school for a long time. And my take on ghostwriting, after having developed a course on ghostwriting and teaching it for 5 years now, is it's method acting, because I was an actress at one point many years ago. And it's anthropology, so we're doing relational interviewing, and then it's creative writing. And that method acting is a really big part of it because you're learning to embody someone else. And one of the things about method acting and Sonia Moore and Stanislavski is a real respect for character in their case. But in our case, they're real people. They're not characters. So there you go. There's a little bit of it. So it starts with listening, empathy, and then just good old-fashioned method acting of really putting yourself in the given circumstances of someone else and kind of living, like imagining yourself embodying them in their actual like physical body where they are. Because it may be far away. Right now I'm writing a book for a client, working on a book for a client who's primarily based out of the Middle East. So obviously I'm not there.
Well, say like someone like me, I've been told several times I should write my story down and basically tell my autobiography. But there's a lot of things that happened in my past that are personal. I mean, I've been open about all that stuff from the beginning of my show. I want to relate to someone who's been through the same things that I have and help them. But say like, I was molested when I was a child.
I'm so
How do
sorry to
you
hear that.
grasp that?
So first of all, let me say, Kyle, I am so sorry that happened to you. Like that's important. Validating a story through creating your own narrative, I find is really powerful for clients. And I have a background in clinical psychology as well. That's where I did my doctoral work. And so understanding that you are creating a narrative that defines it for you as much as it defines it for a reader. That's a really important part of my process for working with clients, is that we are not just defining it for someone else, we're also defining it for you. And I have worked with people who were victims of molestation when they were children. And honestly, like that is hard writing. That is hard going. But it can also really be cathartic, because as much as obviously you must have talked about it before with the way you just talked about it now. When you tell your story, you hear other people's stories, and there is this immediate sense of, like, when you hear someone say, I connect with you, like I lived that experience. You're not alone. Even though you're the person who's putting your story out there, right? You're also getting back. And really, my philosophy with writing, and this is with filmmaking, with any kind of thing, is that it's not a one-way street. It is an exchange between art and artist, right? Between storyteller and listener. Just like you have an exchange with your listeners, right? And so that is a big piece of it. In terms of crafting a book and telling your story, the biggest piece of advice I give people is you cannot kitchen sink a memoir. You cannot kitchen sink a project. Cradle to grave is boring, because even though there is this exchange and there's this cathartic storytelling, I have to engage with a reader. I have to tell them something that they can actually digest. So if you give someone cradle to grave, they can't digest that. That is too much. So it's about like learning to put things in and leave things out, so that you're actually crafting a story arc that makes sense, that feels good to a reader or a viewer, and that also makes you feel good, feels authentic. I have, and I joke that ghostwriting is professional lying, and there's a piece of that, because who wrote the book, how much did they write, whether my name is on it, that kind of thing. But in your instance, writing is also about you don't have to give radical honesty in order to give real authenticity, So you don't have to go into extreme detail of that event. Now, I have done that with clients before. I have ghostwritten experiences of child molestation, and that, in my opinion, were more graphic than they needed to be, but that was the client, that was really what the client wanted. And so that's what, at the end of the day, I am as collaborative as I am, their client. Like I'm giving them what they ask for. I don't think that's always necessary. You can get to the truth of something without being completely disclosing every detail. And that can feel better. Sometimes disclosing every detail does feel good, and that's okay too. Or it does like make sense for the story. So what I would encourage you to do, Kyle, is to start to like lay out the top line things of what you want to share. And then you can fill pieces in. And then, I mean, I hate to say fictionalize. I feel like that sounds dishonest, but it's also not, again, authentic truth versus like verbatim. I have fictionalized lots of things for clients before in their memoirs, because like the world doesn't need to know the names of the people. The world doesn't need to know, like we can change details about it to protect everyone involved while still giving emotional truth of the event, if that makes sense.
But have you ever gotten so into the writing that you've kind of lost yourself?
Oh, that is like a learned skill, to like not do that, to like turn that faucet on and off. I mean, in all honesty, that is where the satisfaction comes in terms of like my personal enjoyment of writing. Getting lost in that. We call it the flow. You can call it all kinds of state, right? Like the Zen state, whatever you call it. No, that's definitely the fun of it. When you write for somebody who has a dark life, less fun. But or you're writing through the dark parts of their story, but also again inhabiting a character, inhabiting another person. No, that's super cool, Kyle. Like that's like the cool part of all this.
What do you do to unwind from all that?
So I like to get outside. I go for walks and I go for hikes. Like I rock climbing with my partner. I enjoy time with my kids, and in all honesty, what I have found, and this is, I don't know if this is what works for everybody. I'm really busy. So that means that when I have that time to turn that on and like fall into a piece, I have a certain amount of time. And then shit has to get done, man. Like you got to go, like the dishes are there, the laundry's
Oh,
there.
yeah.
You got to go teach another class. You got to come on a podcast, right? There's another thing. So I find that filling my time helps me to kind of enter in and out of that.
You heard the story of Heath Ledger when he was playing the Joker and the
Yeah.
things that he did to embody that character. And then in the end, I think that was a contributing factor to why he died. And to get involved in a person's life that actually lived, that's I don't know if you ever get that far, but that's got to be scary.
It's it is a little scary, and especially when I was, like 5 years ago, I remember distinctly remember a book that I worked on that was very dark, and the person was, oh gosh, I have to protect my NDAs. The person was a challenge, not just to me, but to everyone in their life. And working on their piece was pretty brutal. And I feel like I would know that. I knew that going in. I mean, like the reason that I was hired for that particular project was because this was going to be a hard one.
Mm.
And it took much longer than I expected to finish that book, much longer than it generally takes me. And then you can also like timeline, there was a pandemic in there. So that did kind of dampen things because I was homeschooling my 3 kids time that I was working. But that is not something I would enter into again. And I have people in my life that love me who, like my mom, my brothers, my partner, who when we discuss like the books that I'm going to sign. And so if something like that came up again, everybody in my life would be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Is that really the project for you? Like you have other options. Maybe you need to work with someone else. And I'm really proud of that piece. I am really proud of that piece. But I will say that, and that's not the only one. I've worked with lots of people who were really challenging and had really like the ethics of this is part of the intellectual fun of it. But getting into someone who is darker, I've walked away from a few of those projects for ethical reasons. I walked away from someone who had like an experience with violent crime. And when we started on the project, it was really interesting and innovative. We had this really innovative take. I was so excited about like the structure of the piece and all the pieces that were going to go into it. And then we got into it, and it turned out that they were going to really go down this road of making it about race, and that like this violent crime happened because of these folks, because of the racial aspects of it. And I have a get out of jail free clause for both sides in all my contracts, so that like we're milestones, and if at any point it doesn't work, we can cut it, and there's like no love lost, because like whatever work I've been put into it, I've been paid for, they walk away. I have hard deliverables that I give to people, so they don't, like, if you walk away from my project, you can hand it to another writer, right?
Right.
And so there were no hard feelings about that, but I cut that project. I was like a quarter of the way through that book, and I was like, I can't. The way y'all are turning this now to make it about race and make it like these kinds of people are bad. I was like, I'm not gonna do that. Like
No.
that's just not gonna. So there are like, you get in with these people, and then when you get to know, it's like dating, right? Like you get to know someone, and then like the 4th or 5th date, you're like, wait, what's in your freezer? What do you got? What's in that like chest freezer in your garage, man? Let's maybe not do this. You do that. You find out that's horrible. You find out where the bodies are buried after a while working with somebody. So
Well, has that inspired any of your filmmaking? Talking to these folks?
no, there is. So I have a piece that I actually didn't. It's more concept by me and a writing partner, and it's done well on the festival circuit. She's run it through there. It's called Vanity O Press, and it's about a female ghostwriter with 3 kids. I don't know how that's autobiographical at all. Who's a college professor, and she loses her job at her college over like a riff with a student, and then starts writing for these horrible men through a vanity press. And it's very fictionalized, but kind of she took it and ran with it. And so I kind of I stick away from writing about it too much because I do like my job, Kyle. Like I do want to keep writing books. So that one is really, it's comedic, it's over the top, it's like very extreme. There's all kinds of things involved. But yeah.
I could see when you've met all kinds of different people, taking bits and pieces of their lives and creating another character that would just take off.
Well, that is what I do in my own screenwriting. So when I went into the program, I had only been ghostwriting for, 12 years or something when I entered the program. And writing for myself was really, really hard, Kyle.
Oh.
Like that was hard. So the first piece that I wrote in my own voice for myself is a short film called Infinity Care. And it is about the loss of my daughter. So it is this science fiction meditation on grief and capitalism and disability, because my daughter had severe disabilities. And it won a bunch of awards. And we're actually in the early stages of we're going to start fundraising for it in the next month or so, because I have an animator on board. It's an animated short film, and it's about it's about child death because she was 3.5.
Oh.
So that was incredibly empowering to take pieces of my own life and then kind of pieces of other people, like there's the doctor in the story, and I've written memoirs for doctors before. So, and so I start to take all of those pieces. And so in my screenwriting, I very much do that. Like the people who are in my films are people I know, are like my own life. And fictionalizing like that is really fun. I mean, Kyle, that's super fun. So yeah.
But you have that conflict of where am I and where am I taking from other things?
You do. And so like in ghostwriting, that is hard because you want to steer the ship, right? I want to take my expertise and steer someone towards like an outcome that I know will be good. For instance, I had a battle with an author, and I lost because it's not my book. I had a battle with an author over a title, and I was just like, title you're talking about, nobody's going to go for that. And if you decide to self-publish, it's too much.
Right.
And they went around and got things, and it went out under the title. Well, we'll go out under the title that they chose. And so like there are those things, like you give up control, or somebody says, I really want to include this, and you're like, that is boring. People are going to put the book down then. But also with films, so I have worked on scripts for clients as well.
Mhm.
And film is very different because it's so succinct, and you really are, I mean, it's so fun to go back and forth. It's like, I like the jumping. Books are so long, scripts are so brief. You have to just tell people this has to go, which is what I love about the movie industry. Is it's so brutal. It's just so wonderfully, people are just like, nope, that's not going to work. Cut that scene, that dialogue's no good, change its character. Whereas with memoirs, you don't quite have that. You have to kind of stay truer to it. So there's fun on both sides.
Yeah. It's like creating a song. Every note that can be created has been created. And of course, you're going to borrow a little bit from here and there. It's inevitable. You have to. There's no getting around it. So you can still be yourself and take. That's the way I am whenever I would create a comic book character. You have to borrow from something. There's science involved with, how does this guy work? And, you're going to pick and choose from different criminals throughout time and what have you. You have to borrow from somewhere. Everything's been done.
It doesn't. And so where do you borrow? Do you borrow from your own life and your creative work?
Sometimes, yes. But nobody wants to hear my life.
That is generally not the case. That is when I talk to clients and they're like, should I pursue a book? First of all, getting traditionally published, that's a beast. Like that is a years long process if you're going to query, and you just got to dig in unless you want to not. Self-publishing is kind of it. And folks who have a platform or even don't have a platform, they build a platform to sell their books. There is an audience out there. It's not a matter of whether people want to read it. It's a matter of finding the people that want to, and that's a marketing thing, which is a, good book, marketing, good book. Those are two different things.
Right.
So what I focus on in script writing and in ghostwriting as well is we make a great product. We make a great piece that resonates with audiences, that resonates with readers. And then the marketing is separate. That's why you see so much crap on like Netflix or in the movie theaters. It's got money behind the marketing. And so those are two different things. And my goal is to create good stuff. And then the marketing thing is separate. So anyway, there are readers out there for you, Caught. It's just a matter of finding them.
Talking to different guests, they've encouraged me to write. I think it's a how to not live your life kind of book. But back to you. What is your website?
autumnkaren.com. So just like my name. And if you Google Autumn Karen Ghostwriter, it'll be me that comes up. So
Do you have like a one-on-one, a Zoom call or something you do with people to see if you're a fit?
I do, and that's right at the top of my website. So I like talking to all kinds of people, and until I become at so in demand that I have to have a middleman, I do 15-minute sessions for anybody who registers on the website. So if you go and click on there's like a banner right across the top, and you just find time in my schedule, and like I'm interested in stories. It's like I always tell the thing of my mama used to talk to people in the store in the grocery store line. And she'd just hear about all these people, and by the end of the grocery store line, she'd have somebody's life story, right? And so I love that. Like I love doing that. And she's still like that. She's 74 and she's always talking to people everywhere we go. So I love that. So yeah, folks can drop in on me, schedule a time, and see. There's the pragmatic piece of I got to feed the kids, and so I got to make money. But then there's also just the joy of talking to folks. So,
Are you able to list the books that you write, or is that a conflict of interest there?
So there are 3 right now out there that have my name on them. One is 100 Minutes with Osama bin Laden. That's on Amazon. That is a wild story about a man who believes Osama bin Laden came into his Iowa gas station 8 days before 9/11. And so I wrote his book, and really the goal of that book is by the end of it, you don't believe it couldn't happen, right? You're like, oh, well, that's possible. So that's out there. I wrote a feminist erotica novel for a client about 5 years ago, and that's got my name on it. I'm actually about to republish that. It was published through the University of Pleasure Press, and then they've asked me to republish it under my own publishing house, which is Woven Lines, which is on my website too. So that's going to be like the book that launches Woven Lines as a publisher. I've got a couple more books in the kitty that are coming out next year through that. And then the big one is I wrote Mississippi Still Burning, which is the memoir of a Black preacher who took over the KKK from a prison cell. And so my name is out there on that book. And James was remarkable. I cannot believe it's been 5 years. He passed away from bladder cancer in 2019. But his book is, he was a phenomenal activist and mentor. And his book, it's called Mississippi Still Burning because the man who signed over the KKK was Edgar Ray Killen, who committed the Mississippi burning murders. And so they were in prison together in Mississippi. And I always smile whenever I think about James because he was fantastic. So those are the 3 that have my name on them. There are a couple of others at this point, for the most part, books have my name on them. Like I don't really want to not be associated with things. I have done a whole lot of there's most of the books out there, I'll see them come up in my social media. I'm like, I wrote that. Like that's my book, but there's someone else's. So yeah, there you go.
And what's your social media?
I am at Autumn Carrying on everything. So TikTok and Instagram, and then, on LinkedIn, all those things.
Well, I try to make it easy for everyone, so I'll put all those links in the description. Autumn, thank you so much for being on. This has been great. I really enjoyed the conversation.
You're wonderful, Mr. Coyote. Thank you so much.
And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. For my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Till the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network